Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I noticed somebody said Max coughs. Yes, I was pressing the wrong button when I was logging on first, so apologies for that. So, who's coughing? Yes. Great to have everyone on the stream tonight. Hope you're all very well. That was extremely unprofessional of me. So let's see who we have. We have Glasgow Kiss. Great to see you, Glasgow. I hope you're well. We have Wayne. Great to see you. Conservator. Great to have you on. Hope you're well. Tiny Demolition Lover, hope you're well too. Hope all is well up there in Scotland. We have Killer, great to see you, Killer. Hope you're well. We have, let me see, Geraldine, great to see you. Hope you're well. We also have the the Buttons blog. That's great to see you on the stream once again. Enzo the God, great to see you, Enzo. Hope you're doing well this evening. Gene T, great to see you once again. We have FSM is the dog. As always, FSM definitely is the dog. Dano, great to see you. Who else have we got? Did I say hello to Conservator already? I hope I if I didn't, hello Conservator. We have Reagan Elite, great to see you. And also, way down, we have Joe Green, great to see you, Joe. Good to have you on. I love some of these names. Sugar Free, great to see you. Hope you're well, Sugar Free. The road to fascism is kind of fluffy. Yes, that's right. We have Blue Sky. We also have Ed, great to see you, Ed. Night Raven, great to see you. Pineapple Boy, good to see you. We have a super chat from Darren Macaster. Great to see you, Darren. Thanks so much for that super chat. We also, Valerio, thank you so much once again. Valerio is a regular with the super chats. Thanks so much for that. Very kind of you. Hi, Max. Starmer can really reform Labour Party. I think it's a bit of an uphill struggle for him. I think it's possible to reform the Labour Party, but what I've been seeing over the last number of days since the election results is a lot of infighting. And unfortunately, look, I made a comment on Twitter about this. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's almost like the Labour left hate Keir Starmer more than they hate Boris Johnson. And that's extremely concerning because the enemy is Boris Johnson. Keir Starmer is problematic, definitely, but he's the leader at the moment. So there are two ways of looking at it. Either you get behind him or you undermine him. And if you undermine him, then you're just playing into the Tories' hands. Yes, he's not great. There are a lot of problems with him, but he's the leader at the moment. So you have to work with what you have. Unfortunately, I think because of what's been left over from Corbynism, the Corbynistas are not happy with, you know, look, I know I'm going to piss off a lot of people, but, you know, with the Messiah gone, they have an axe to grind. They believe that Jeremy Corbyn was undermined by the centre of the party, and they're out for blood, and they would prefer to fail. They would prefer to see the Labour Party fail than succeed under Keir Starmer or not Jeremy Corbyn. Daily Blase uploaded a very interesting video today. I recommend you check it out, where I think it was an interview James O'Brien had with two Labour supporters. And the Labour left would actually prefer to forget the Blair years. And Daily Blase brought up a very valid point. He said that, yes, Tony Blair was a disaster on foreign policy. But when it came to other policies, like increasing numbers of teachers, nurses, increasing benefits for people, reducing child poverty, there are a lot of policies that the Labour Party, pushed through, and these were policies that helped people. Yes, there was the war in Iraq that Tony Blair agreed to send British soldiers over to, who joined, he joined up with the Republican Party in the United States, the George W. Bush, in order to fight, in Iraq. That was a huge mistake. But back in 1997, 2000 was it 2001, and 2008 was it, or whatever, the 2005, the Labour Party were in power and they were doing things, and it seems that the Labour left would actually prefer to wipe that period of history out completely and ignore it. And that's the problem. You actually have to say, look, we need to look back at the things that we did right during the Blair years and remind people that, when we were in power, we did things for people. Yes, Iraq was a disaster, but that's one issue. Foreign policy, a disaster. Domestic issues, domestic policy, there's a lot to put down as something positive. Thanks for that super chat, Valerio. Reagan Elite, before the stream starts, Max, whoops. I lost the super chat, but back up. Before the stream starts, Max, we need to see your ID card. Very well said, Reagan Elite. So I'm going to get into this during the stream. Of course, this issue of ID cards in the UK. Here in Italy, in Ireland, I don't think it's the case unless things have changed since I left, but it's not really the case. Unless it's changed in the last number of months. I haven't been in Ireland for about 2 years because of COVID. About a year because of COVID. But in Italy here, you have an ID card. And the ID card you must carry with you at all times. If you don't have it, there's a risk you get a fine. But there isn't a problem with having an ID card because everyone has it. There isn't a cost with having the ID card. I think to get it renewed every 10 years is about €10, something like that. I don't remember the last time I renewed it. It's mainly the cost is related to the photograph. Now, I mentioned in one of the videos how, an ID card, if you have to pay for it, a form of ID, it can be expensive. A passport is quite expensive for, if you're on universal credit, was it £97-98 a week, and you have to get a form of ID like a passport, for example, that's almost £100. That's a huge amount of money. And are you going to say, well, I'm going to spend this money to get a piece of paper that will allow me to vote? A lot of people don't have that choice. Poverty is about choice. Poverty is about lack of money, but poverty is also about lack of choices. People, when they don't have enough money to survive, they have to make choices. Do I feed my family today, or do I pay the rent? Sometimes you're forced to make choices that are not the best in the long term, but they get you over the problem of today. So this idea of bringing in ID cards, it's not an attempt to protect democracy. It's the absolute opposite. Thanks, Reagan Elite, but I'll talk about that more later in the stream. We also have West G. Thank you so much. No comment. Thank you very much for that. No comment. I hope I haven't pissed off people about Jeremy Corbyn. I promise. I like Jeremy Corbyn as an individual. I just think as leader of the Labour Party, he was a very bad salesman. Labour had very good policies, but he was very bad at selling them. No ideas in Ireland, Max. No. No ID cards in Ireland. No, as far as I know, yes. And I agree with you. Daily Blessy is on the stream. Great to see you. I really enjoyed that video that you uploaded today. I posted a comment. I agreed 100%. The idea that the Labour Party would ignore a period, and I'm not talking about the Labour Party, I'm talking about people within the Labour Party. There were big problems in the Labour Party, when Tony Blair was in power. Peter Mandelson was a disaster. But I'm talking about the policies. I'm not talking about some of the individuals. And this is what many people seem to focus on. They focus on the individuals like Tony Blair, or they focus on Peter Mandelson or people like that. No, I think we shouldn't be focusing on the individuals. We should be focusing on the successes. And remember, and trying to convince people to remember these successes. Boris Johnson and the Tories before him have wiped away those successes. That's what you have to remember. And unfortunately, there are people in Hartlepool who are convinced that, you know, the reason there isn't a hospital or a police station in their town is because of the Labour Party. Daily Blase has done quite a few great videos, hard hitting. I agree 100%. Do check him out. Hopefully somebody can post a link. Daily Blase himself can post a link in the... Oh no, he can't actually. A moderator can only post a link as far as I know. We just use our national ID for when voting. Show national ID to any old lady at the voting booth. This is in Poland. The same here in Italy. You receive your voting card a couple of weeks or a month before it's time to vote. And just when you go to the polling booth, you show the voting card and you show your ID, and that's it. The problem, I think, with the idea of introducing voter ID is that it's not an attempt to, as I said, to protect democracy. The Tories don't care about democracy. They're bringing it in order to limit people's access to voting. Because if they cared about democracy and the voter IDs, voter ID cards would be free. I don't see it happening as being free. They would issue them to everyone. They want as everyone to have one. It would be, you know, you can set up a commission. Say everyone receives a voter ID card and it's free. But that's not what they're going to do. Cummins told Labour how to win the next election. Vote Max in a mankini for Labour leader. Would that win votes? I don't think so. GOP playbook in the UK. Yeah. So what the Republicans in the United States have been doing, and I know some Americans are probably on the stream and they'd be able to explain it better than I ever could. But generally, what the Republicans do are disenfranchise people from voting. They try to limit people's access to voting because they know that certain demographics will come out and vote anyway. They want their supporters to come out and vote. And in one of the videos I uploaded, I talked about how, I think it was in Texas, where, you know, a gun license is an acceptable form of ID, but a student ID isn't a valid form of ID. And the problem is, there's nothing federal. It's not set on a federal level. It's set on an individual state level. So, you know, you could have an ID that's valid in California, but then if you were to relocate to Alabama, for example, your ID would no longer be valid. Jim Crow laws for the 21st century, yes, FSM. Making it more and more difficult for certain people to vote. Other ways they've disenfranchised people in the United States has been to actually close polling booths in certain areas. So they would concentrate the polling booths in, for example, suburban areas, knowing that the majority of suburban people vote for the Republican Party, or limit, you know, people's access. Like there will be something like one polling booth per 20,000 inhabitants, making long queues. Then people would arrive, they'd see a huge queue, a long queue, and then they just turn around and go home. That's a way of stopping people from voting. There's so many tricks and tools that they've used. Closing polling booths at certain times. So this would stop people who perhaps, you know, work 2 or 3 jobs. Poorer people who have to do 2 or 3 jobs, finish late, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m. in the evening. They want to go and vote. Well, the polling booth closes at 6 p.m. If you're retired, if you are, you know, you can take time off work. If you're able to take time off work, means you're probably not doing 2 or 3 jobs. You're more likely to be middle class or rich, and you'll be able to vote. If you're retired, you're more likely to vote for the Republican Party in the US. These are tools that the Republicans have been using, and I'm pretty sure the Conservatives in the UK are planning to use as many of these as possible. A general ID card would be a great idea as long as it's free. Yes, it has to be free. As long as there's a cost, and it doesn't have to, you can make it free. That's the way it should be. Modern ID got a cryptographed chip linked to the government certification authority for signed documents, PDFs, docs, etc., and digital notary. Sorry, Andre. They're thriving on austerity. Even if everyone gets a free ID, a percentage will forget, so less votes. Yes. It's not actually necessary at the moment. That's the problem. It's not a requirement at the moment. The Tories are saying we need to clamp down on, voter fraud. But there is no voter fraud. Or there was something like 3 people committed voter fraud. But when you actually look at voter fraud, it's like people who maybe, voted twice by accident. It's generally not intentional. I heard the Tories are bringing in voter ID so they can replace Sadiq Khan with a Tory at the next London mayoral election. They're not. They were hoping that their guy would win it. It's not just in London. It's it would affect huge sections of society, huge parts like all over the country. ID cards will never be free. The cost of photos too much for some. See, the government could make it free if they wanted. That would be the proof. Will be in the proof of the pudding will be in the eating if they push this through and they get their voter ID bill or whatever it is. If they don't earmark funding for it, but it's then it's going to be there's going to be a cost. So I have my audio off for some reason. Okay. Bet IDs will be barcoded as well. Scary. Here in Denmark, we do that with any ID card. Usually first is free, review is paid. In Bulgaria, it's 18 leva, €9 for normal, and 36 for expires delivery. For express delivery, sorry. Making it free would defeat the purpose of the bill. Yes. Because but once again, the purpose of the bill is to disenfranchise people from voting. It's not actually it's definitely not to encourage people. There are more investigations into Johnson than the number of convictions for voter fraud. 100% well said, GT. I think that they've stopped issuing NI cards around 2013, I think. National insurance cards around 2013. In Scotland, we voted with a card sent to us by post as a foreigner in Scotland. I liked as I was given access to everyone. It gave access to everyone. Yes, and this is something. This is a real separation that's taking place between Scotland and the rest of the UK, where it seems England in particular is moving further and further to the right, while Scotland is moving further and further to the left. And you're going to see a major showdown coming in the next number of months and years. Because I think this is all actually working against the union. The Scottish people will look across the border and they say, what the hell is going on over there? We don't want any of that. We don't want a dictator, basically. Somebody who's forcing forcing a new form of austerity onto people. This isn't too far off a poll tax if it's actually going to be required that you pay for the ID card. It's not that different to a poll tax, where you say, well, you're allowed to vote, but you need to pay basically in order to vote. FSM is the dog. Thank you so much for that super chat. Also see Nasri bringing in first past the post for mayors. Yes, this was something that I noticed online as well, that there's an attempt to bring in first past the post for mayors, for mayoral elections. Because you saw that in the first round of voting in London, Sadiq Khan didn't win a majority on the first round, but he won a majority in the second round. Now, first past the post could change that. It would, of course, eliminate. It would, of course, eliminate the smaller parties, but it would basically, once again, render many people's votes invalid or more pointless. First past the post needs to go, but I think the Tories realise that it's serving them quite well, and they're definitely going to fight the removal of first past the post tooth and nail. I'm going to pass them down as an heirloom. Okay, so I wanted to jump into this, guys. So remember to smash the like button. You can support the channel by sending a super chat, or you can become a patron, or you can just share videos on social media. So I want to start off with we've heard the Queen's, we haven't all heard the Queen's speech today, but we heard some of it, probably from bits all over the internet, from places all over the internet. But this is Starmer's response to it. So Starmer accused Johnson of short-term gimmicks after Queen's speech. So it says, Keir Starmer has accused the government of failing to grasp the urgency and the scale of the transformation that is needed after the COVID pandemic in his response to the Queen's speech. The Labour leader pointed to Joe Biden's programme for rebuilding the US economy after, as he claimed Boris Johnson was papering over the cracks. Papering being the apt expression. What was it, £850 wallpaper. This is something that really pissed me off, is that the Tories were being attacked by the Labour Party on Boris Johnson spending £850 on wallpaper, when they didn't focus on the number of people who have died as a consequences of Tory policies. Anyway, and too focused on short-term gimmicks and distant promises. But this is Boris Johnson to a T. Boris Johnson, remember Operation Moonshot? Do you remember that? Does anyone remember Operation Moonshot, where billions of pounds were handed over to Dominic Cummings and disappeared? Every week there was some new policy. Yes, we're going to have some new moonshot, some new initiative, and lots of money were handed over to somebody, and then it just sort of disappeared from the newspapers. The government still don't understand what went wrong in the past decade and has no plan for the next, Starmer said. He lamented that the lack of jobs plan in the speech and the long-term promised employment bill to bolster rights at work. This is what I've been saying since the beginning of Brexit. Brexit is disaster capitalism. This is what this is the core of what Brexit is all about. It's about hollowing out protections for the working class, for workers in general. It's about destroying environmental protections. It's about lowering standards. It's about creating a place where disaster capitalism is able to thrive, where government oversight is non-existent, where where corruption is able to rule. And we've seen it when it came to the pandemic. PPE contracts handed out to friends of the Conservative Party or donors, or people who are working, with one foot in Westminster, one foot in a private company. This has, and the worst thing about all of this is that the voters continue to support it. People continue to vote for this. It just blows my mind. I think they've been able to also bring on board a lot of these culture war issues, these cultural issues such as wokeism and flags and all of this crap, how they're able to convince people that these are the things you need to focus on. You know, don't worry about your jobs, don't worry about your children's future, don't worry about these things. We need to focus on statues, we need to focus on flags, we need to focus on, extremely small elements within society that are being inflated. And what I mean by this is there are people on the left, or generally they're liberals who are well off, and they complain about, they're a very extreme fringe, but who push the idea of wokeness or whatever. At the end of the day, wokeness is basically common decency under a new name. But the conservatives have understood that they can use this and weaponize it. They can use this woke idea and say these people who are disconnected from reality have infiltrated the Labour Party. They are running the Labour Party basically, and you can see a parallel in the United States how the Republicans are using exactly the same language to paint the Democrats. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Tucker Carlson, but he's a fascinating individual to watch, because what he'll do is he'll take one example of maybe a professor at a university who said the wrong thing and got, called out by his students for saying the wrong thing, a microaggression or whatever. And then he'll say, well, these people are on the left. The Democrats are on the left. So the Democrats condone or support this type of behavior. And then he extends it out to, this is the type of behavior isn't just taking place in college campuses, it's going to take place in your workplace. You will not be free to, express yourself. And this type of rhetoric, this type of manipulation of the public is going to be copied in the UK as well. You can see it. You can see how, a year ago, nobody was talking about flags. Nobody was talking about statues. Nobody gave a crap about any of these things. And now suddenly, there is this fear that statues are going to be toppled, that the history of, the legacy, I should say, of Churchill has been tarnished. Do people not see that this is something new? That the Conservatives are somehow immediately concerned about these things? I don't know. I see wokeness in media as forced representation of underrepresented groups, like Ray, Captain Marvel, who are strong with no character development for the sake of... See, this is... Ed, I agree with you, but the problem with this is that this is not about class struggle. This is big business understanding that they can still make money by, in a sense, virtue signaling. Because if the big businesses like corporations or people like this wanted to truly lift up people, they wouldn't just produce tokens like this. They would actually fight for the working class. And they're not doing that. They understand that, yes, we can show the world that we're not racist anymore, or we're not sexist, or we're not homophobic. And by doing that, they're able to maintain their status in society. They're able to continue to make lots of money. And they know that, in the past, this was not cost effective. But now it is. They're able to... I don't like the term virtue signal, but it is a type of virtue signaling, saying, look how great we are. But at no stage are these companies saying, we're going to pay staff, for example, in the United States, a minimum wage, or we're going to make sure that people's workers at the bottom have their rights protected. This is the thing about these companies. Disney, Apple, Amazon, companies like this, Apple less, but we see it especially with these mega corporations where they will pretend to care about these issues like wokeness or gay rights or Black Lives Matter, for example. They will sign up to that knowing that the working class, in a sense, will not respond or can't respond. Spread the word, more statues in the lots of slaver dictators, Tory statues, yes. Anyway, I'm getting a bit sidetracked. Starmer went on to say, responding to Starmer, the Prime Minister insisted his plan for the next Parliament would help UK to bounce back better. It's just about slogans. How is it going to bounce back better from the pandemic, saying the government won't settle for getting back to the way things were? Once again, this is hollowing out protections for workers, protections for the environment, protections for the public. Disaster capitalism. Creating a situation where the Tories are free to offer contracts to their friends, to their donors. And there's no way of responding to that. Boris Johnson has an 81-seat majority now. We have Hartlepool. He knows that he's untouchable. The Tories know they are untouchable. They can do whatever the hell they want. This is something that you notice when a party has been in power for a long time. Now, this is with the exception of maybe the SNP, but when a party has been in power for a long time, corruption sets in because they become convinced that they can do whatever the hell they want and the other side can do nothing about it. And I think there's also the mentality, let's make as much money while the sun shines, because later on we're going to lose power and then we're going to go back to the way we were. So let's try and serve our customers, serve our donors the best we can, make sure that when we eventually leave, we have a nice, comfortable, cushy job to go to. Public office is a means to an ends. It's not serving the public. It's about serving myself at the end of the day. I uploaded a video recently, or just today it was, where the Speaker of the House, and some people criticize me for criticizing the Speaker of the House, but I don't know if you guys had seen it, but the Speaker's Corner video, why didn't he ask, what was his name, Ben Spencer, why did you vote for these things? Why did you vote against reasons you became an MP? Look, I know he's in the House of Commons as the Speaker. He's not allowed to intervene and do these things. But he was doing an interview. He could have simply asked him, but you voted for these things. You voted against these things. Why did you do that? Well, of course he didn't do that. He's even more useless than I had actually thought. Because when he's actually able to criticize people, criticize politicians, he doesn't. Maybe he's another one who's hoping to get a good job out of it at the end. Maybe he wants to get into the House of Lords. Probably. Isn't it a wonder why John Bercow hasn't been made a Lord? Though we cannot for one moment minimise the damage that COVID has done, the loss of learning, the NHS backlogs, the court delays, the massive fiscal consequences, we must use this opportunity to achieve a national recovery so that jobs means jobs. This is the type of language that's useful for your average, and I know I'm going to piss people off by saying this, but your average Express, Daily Mail, Sun reader. Jobs means jobs. Yeah, if you ignore Brexit, with the Tories keen to hold on to former Labour heartlands, they won in 2019. Johnson promised that the government would create superb infrastructure. Yes, boost home ownership and level up across the rest of the whole of the UK. That message was at the central theme of the Queen's speech, which she delivered in the House of Lords, accompanied by Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. Announcing the list of planned new bills in a relatively minimalist ceremony with only 74 people in the House in the Lords Chamber. Okay, well, blah, blah, blah. So some of the policies that they're going to bring in were... so promised legislation will create new state aid rules on subsidising businesses, as long as it's not in conflict with the level playing field. Marked out the next stage of HS2 rail link from Manchester to Crewe, and extend high-speed broadband and 5G mobiles coverage. Isn't it interesting that the Tories will pick up Labour policies and run with them and say, these are our policies? Jabs pull sword out of Boris's corpse. That's a joke, of course. There would have been moves to create 8 new free ports. Once again, these free ports, a flagship element of Johnson's post-Brexit economic offering. Look, of course, the free ports are a disaster because, well, if you import and try to export from them, you'll face tariffs. And as you know, the European Union is clamping down on these free ports because they've been basically used for money laundering. Does anyone believe that the Brexiteers... Sorry, I saw the word Brexiteers. Anyone believe that the Tories will clamp down on money laundering at these free ports? James S., thank you so much for that super chat. Will Brexiteers ever see sense if things get worse? Yes and no. Thanks again for the super chat. They will. Some will. Others will not. The ones who will not, of course, will be the Jeff Taylors and the Andre Walkers of this world, because it's not in their interest to point out the problems. It's in their interest to continue to push the idea that Brexit is a success. Maybe it's an economic interest. Maybe it's a pride issue. I don't know. But it doesn't benefit them. Now, some people who have voted for Brexit will come around and say, look, this has been a disaster for my business, for my family, for myself. You know, the idea that some business people who have to travel to Europe after COVID for business meetings won't be able to do that. Now, you know, many people will respond, well, you can just do the meeting online. But if you look at high-level meetings, what I talk about is like, you know, senior management. They generally have face-to-face meetings. They don't want to have online meetings because of when it's doing negotiations and things like that. Part of their way of interacting with people has to be in person. They lose a lot by not. And you know it yourself when you've done a meeting with people online. It's nowhere near as, it doesn't have the same impact. You know, if you're doing a presentation or if you're trying to buy or sell something and get a good deal, you know, doing it online is nowhere near as powerful because the setting, you know, if you're conducting the negotiations in your location, you can arrange the seating, maybe like Liz Truss giving people small chairs or whatever. But you can arrange a lot of the way, you know, the breaks, bringing coffee at a certain time. There's a whole range of things you can do in order to increase your chances of success. And a lot of that is lost online. And that's why a lot of the high level negotiations with senior management take place in person. I don't know where I was going with that for a moment. Philippe, thank you so much for that super chat. The superb infrastructure was achieved. So Boris's 850 quid wallpaper. Very superb, very infrastructure. Well said. What's that ding sound? It's the super chats coming in. You should be able to see it on your screen, Maj. Let me read some more of your... Can't do the funny handshake on Zoom. Yes. That's a loss, yes. You know, if you're a Mason, for example. Anyway, other planned bills would shake up the NHS, tackle obesity by banning some junk food ads, and create the scientific research agency envisaged by Johnson's former advisor, Dominic Cummings. So much to break down here. Shake up the NHS. What do you think that means? Can we read between the lines here? Shaking up the NHS means selling off the NHS. You know, I wonder how many people, and I'm not criticizing everyone here, but I wonder how many people who signed yes to leave the European Union, leave, like whatever, I don't remember the ballot, was it yes or leave, whatever, to leave the European Union, believed that they were voting to sell off the NHS, because that's the consequence of it. Tackle obesity by banning junk food ads. This is very, you know, this is low cost, useless ways of dealing with problems. Okay, let's ban, you know, fast food ads. Fast food ads have an impact, yes, but it's generally, you don't convince people. Fast food ads convince people who are already, in a sense, addicted to fast food. Banning the ads are not going to stop people from going to McDonald's. People go to McDonald's irrespective. And also I think the banning was after a certain time of the day, so it's not completely banning them. But I don't see how that's really going to have a huge impact. A better solution would be to actually give people free advice. Encourage people to go to their GP. Provide services for people. Like the Tories would say, yes, we need to reduce obesity in the country. So what we've decided through our austerity plan is to cut services for young people or older people in their community. You know, there was a local football club or a rugby club or a tennis club or something, a swimming pool. Well, we've actually cut funding for the councils, so the councils can't maintain these services, so people don't use them. If there was a swimming pool in your area, maybe you'd be able to go swimming. But now that there isn't, you can't. And that is a huge loss. And just banning fast food advertising is just the quick fix and I'm afraid this is, once again, I think, coming from the Republican Party in the United States. Quick fixes instead of long-term investment. And I don't even know where to go with the Scientific Research Agency. What the hell is that about? So let's go a little bit further into this. This is a report from Channel 4 News, yes, on the Queen's speech. So let's hear what they had to say.
The pageantry of the state opening of Parliament was pared right back. A small convoy of cars brought the Queen to Parliament. Instead of a crown, today a hat, a dress-down ceremony, socially distanced. The Queen sat alone, as she did at Prince Philip's funeral, just over...
So, why does the Queen have a handbag? What does she keep in her handbag? Her phone? What phone does the Queen have? Is it an iPhone or is it an Android? Max, notice me. I do notice it. What do you say? I didn't see your comment before. Does she have car keys? A snack? You know, this meeting takes a long time. You know, I want to pull out do you have pocket coffee in the UK? Here in Italy, we have pocket coffee, which is very nice. They're from Ferrero, I think. Little chocolates with coffee inside to give you a bit of a boost. What does she have in her handbag? Sorry.
Over 3 weeks ago. The Prime Minister and the Labour leader came to the Lords to listen to the Queen read out a Conservative slogan that brought the party much success in last week's elections.
My government will level up opportunities across all parts of the United Kingdom.
There were 26 bills, but not a keenly awaited one, reforming social care. That is still work in progress.
Proposals on social care reform will be brought forward.
The government said...
Social care reform. Is that like universal credit? I love your comments. So let me read out some of them. Well, she got in her handbag. I see. Tissues, notebook, mints, the usual stuff. A gun. Isn't the Queen still in mourning? Yes, actually, she should be still in mourning, no? It's secret protocol. No Apple fanboys allowed here. She has tissues in the bag. Taser. A bus pass. Lady products. Liz is the biz. So the souls of dead children. Pepper spray. She's got cracking in that handbag. She's got crack in the handbag. She has iPod Nano in her handbag. It's just dress, yes. Oh, well, I thought it was interesting.
Those proposals will come soon. Back in the Commons, Sir Keir Starmer reminded Boris Johnson what he'd promised nearly 2 years ago when he first became Prime Minister.
I am announcing now on the steps of Downing Street that we will fix the crisis in social care once and for all.
But does anyone actually believe anything that Boris Johnson says?
With a clear plan we have prepared.
We have prepared. Yet 657 days on from that promise, what did we hear in this address? Proposals on social care reform will be brought forward. No legislation, no new funding, no details, no timescale. Failure to act for a decade, and it was failure to act for a decade, was bad enough. But failure to act after the pandemic is nothing short of an insult to the whole nation.
The government said this Queen's speech would boost the economy with new rules.
Boost the economy. James S., thank you so much for that super chat. The UK government need a new trade negotiator. Yes. What's his name? David Frost is not cutting it.
Rules on state subsidies, relaxation of planning laws. But the government also...
Relaxation of planning laws. You know, who's that going to benefit? Does that benefit the working class? Does that benefit ordinary people? Relaxation of planning laws. Basically telling businesses, you can build whatever the hell you want, wherever the hell you want.
Also found time for constitutional measures, trimming the court's powers to challenge Parliament.
Trimming the court's powers to challenge Parliament. Look, guys, I posted this on Twitter earlier. The UK is heading towards fascism. Trimming the court's powers to challenge Parliament. We've seen this before. Look at what's happened with the BBC. Put in a donor to the Conservative Party at the head of the BBC. So, on one hand, you're going to have the pro-Tory propaganda, and we've seen this already, and I'm going to show you an example in a moment as well. And on the other hand, you have any powers to stop Boris Johnson and his cronies being whittled away, being reduced. How is it possible that the executive can reduce the powers of the judiciary? Isn't that anti-constitutional? I'm not a scholar in constitutional law, but that sounds unconstitutional.
Requiring photo ID to vote. And in the Commons, the Prime Minister made time to mock Keir Starmer's botched reshuffle in his attempt to appease his own angered Deputy Leader Angela Rayner with new job titles.
The Deputy Leader, the Shadow's First Secretary of State, the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and Shadow Secretary of State for the future of work. Though the more titles he feeds her, Mr. Speaker, the hungrier I fear she is likely to become.
Moments earlier, Keir Starmer's closest parliamentary aide resigned after allegations she'd spread rumours about Angela Rayner's private life.
Got gold on there.
The COVID-compliant state opening is over. And soon, the government hopes, COVID's domination of our national life might be over too. Well, are we really much wiser about what levelling up means at the end of all of this? Well, the government would say a bit wiser because they've told us about things like loans for lifelong learning. But when you look at the proposals that are out there, they can look a lot like what a lot of governments have been trying to do for a long time, rebranded. The government would say, well, we have had a huge chunk of the British state utterly absorbed by COVID, but they do acknowledge in the chunky document that they produced today with the Queen's speech that there's a lot more detail still to come on levelling up. At the moment, it remains really a very successful political slogan in search of distinctive definition, I think it's fair to say. But the other hole, the hole that most people are talking about in this Queen's speech, is the missing policy on social care. It does look as though the Prime Minister is leaning towards some sort of cap on lifetime care costs. It looks very much as though he hasn't got the Treasury to sign on the dotted line yet for any kind of outline proposal.
Okay, and it got off there. Let me read some of your chats. Far-right populism dressed as a clown. Lie, 1930s Germany. He wants to ruin Keir's mum's donkey sanctuary and build a car park. Yes. Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves. For the rich anyway. Yeah, that's always been the... I love Tom's unity through faith, strength through unity. That was at Fire. Was it Norse Fire from V for Vendetta. Blame Grenfell Tower on Labour's war criminal Tony Blair. That's what I said at the beginning of the stream, is Tony Blair's foreign policy was a disaster. The domestic policy was something different. Why the House of Lords is safety net for what they have. Yes, it's, worst comes to the worst, you can be made a member of the House of Lords and you're protected. So guys, we're about halfway through the stream. Actually, now I want to get to this clip. Let me see if I can find it. Where is it? I have it in my list. No, here we go. This was extremely disappointing. It's from the BBC.
There's quite a lot of strong...
So we have the BBC basically saying, don't call Boris Johnson's ID plans, they're, to suggest that they're undermining democracy is nonsense.
Words being thrown around here.
Yes.
Some people accusing the governments of trying to sort of some form of voter suppression, which of course is something that, well, I'm sure the minister here would today, but Boris Johnson himself dismissed that yesterday as being complete nonsense.
Because people have been using the US example and saying, well, this is a way of, if you're so inclined, it's a way of restricting people.
Yes.
Which I'm sure the minister, clearly that's not your stated intention, I know that, but do you have fears around it?
No, and I'm not sure that many people would. I mean, if I go to collect a parcel at the post office now, I need to take my driving licence or my passport. Pretty much everything I do, I need to prove who I am. I personally think there's probably a case even for looking at, having ID online, because we know that there's a lot of fraud online, and we know...
But there isn't fraud when it comes to voting. Is it a right of the public to vote? It's not a right to get a parcel sent to your home. That's completely unrelated to the fundamental rights that we as citizens are supposed to have. Now, if you want to introduce, as I said before, an ID card for some other reason, then that's okay, but it needs to be free. You can't impose a cost on the public because, for example, a driving license is not, to drive a car is not a constitutional right. Traveling around the world is not a constitutional right. In those cases, you need a passport, you need a driver's license. It's not a constitutional right to have a car. But it is a constitutional right, as far as I know, to vote. When you're 18, you have the right to vote. By introducing a restriction on that, it's unconstitutional. I don't know how this could be passed, how this would not be challenged in the courts. In order to vote, you need to have this ID card. This is something that's been brought in now. I don't know how the UK Constitutional Court how this would be challenged in the Supreme Court. I don't know how the court would respond to this. This is wrong. You can use them, but you can also use a bank card or house bill. So it doesn't have to be any of these. It just has to be some sort of proof of ID or proof of address. You could lose your driving license with old age. Yes, that's a valid point as well, Aaron. How much voter fraud is there really? My word, does this lady infuriate? I think there's something like 3 cases of voter fraud at the last election, I think it was. 3 cases, not 3%, not 0.3%, not 0.3%, 3 cases. Or 16-year-old in some civilized countries. Exactly, Max. It's a poll tax. Yes, look, if it's free and it's brought in for some other reason, for whatever reason you want, but it has to be, if it's an attempt to clamp down on so-called voter fraud, that's going to be, I think, unconstitutional. A freedom pass. Look, I'm not against ID cards. My problem with them is the Tories are bringing it in order to disenfranchise people from voting. It's not about protecting democracy. The flag democracy is what China government calls soft power, what they use in other countries, not internal. Only 6 cases, Max, and Matt Hancock said they still needed. So when it comes to, how many Tories have taken bribes? How many Tories have acted corrupted, in some way corrupt? Should they be fired? No, that's okay. There's, corruption is, these things happen. But, 6 cases of alleged voter fraud, then we need to have a complete clampdown. This is exactly the rhetoric, exactly the same excuses the Republican Party use. James, thank you so much for that super chat. How would homeless people prove their identity? Very well asked. How would they prove their identity? They probably wouldn't be able to prove their identity. So what's happened in the United States when it comes to voter ID is that for the homeless, for undocumented immigrants, there are sponsorships for them in order to get a form of ID. So somebody sponsors them instead, or I think there's a proxy voting system instead. But I'm not queued up on it. But no, I wanted to respond to. So what Reagan Elite said, only 6 cases. When I think it was I forget his name, former governor of Texas, not George W. Bush. The guy came later. I forget his name. Guy who would put on glasses to look intellectual, but he was still dumb. What that really pisses me off, when you see politicians putting on glasses to convince the public that they're intellectuals. I forget his name. Anyway, he defended the death penalty. He defended maintaining the death penalty, even though 3%, I think it was something like 3% of people had been executed. Rick Perry. Thank you so much, Jack. Rick Perry had said, it's okay if 3% of people are killed via the death penalty, even though they were innocent. But when it comes to, that's an acceptable percentage of failure. But when it comes, but if it's 3% of people, you know, which is not even anywhere near 3% of people, what was it, illegally voting, then we need to have a voter ID. We need to clamp down on this. So it's okay to kill people, but it's not okay for a few odd people to get in and vote twice or something like that in a Republican state that always votes Republican. Rick Perry, Governor, Trump's Secretary of Energy. Yes. Please may we never return to those times. But I'm afraid we may. Okay, I just want to take a little break, guys. Once again, just a comedy moment. Very, very short comedy moment. I just wanted to show you this. It's quite funny on Twitter. Very, very short, this one, but we'll be back in a moment. Let's see this. Oh, no. Need audio.
Good evening, it's Boris and Carrie here.
Hello.
Fuck off. Good evening, it's Boris and Carrie here.
Hello.
Fuck off. Good evening, it's Boris and Carrie here.
Hello.
Fuck off. Good evening, it's Boris and Carrie here.
Hello.
Fuck off.
Okay, that's enough. Okay, let's move on. So I want to show you this passionate speech by Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Who? I know I hear you saying, who? The Liberal what? But no, he delivered a very interesting, passionate speech against Boris Johnson's, against the Queen's speech, blaming or suggesting that Boris Johnson and the Tories are doing exactly what I've been saying at the beginning, copying the Republican Party in the United States.
But this government's undemocratic planning reforms are, I'm afraid, just another example of this authoritarian government. Their plans to crack down on protests, restrict judicial review, and undermine the Human Rights Act. These are plans about taking power away from individuals, undermining the rule of law, and silencing any opposition to this government. And then there is the plan to force people to show identity papers just in order to vote. A plan ripped straight from the Donald Trump playbook. Despite, or maybe because, the clear evidence is that it will disproportionately impact ethnic minorities, older people and those on lower incomes, who are just trying to vote. Coming hot on the heels of the government's unworkable, expensive and divisive plans for COVID ID cards, people can now see this is an illiberal government, cracking down on protests because they make the government's life uncomfortable, weakening the courts because they sometimes rule against ministers, making it harder for people to vote because they don't always vote for you. These are the actions of despots, not Democrats. Well, Liberal Democrats will fiercely oppose these plans, defend British democratic traditions, and defend individual freedom and the individual's ability to challenge ministers and participate fully in our democracy.
I agree with him 100%. Unfortunately, his representation in Parliament is extremely small, and it's extremely limited. James S., thank you so much for that super chat. The death penalty was abused by rich people. Yes, the poorer, that's a very valid point. The poorer, you're talking to... I know the irony of me being anti-death penalty, okay? Let me be clear here, okay? I'm anti-death penalty. Yes, I know the irony is not lost on that. But generally, if you look at countries like the United States, the people who are executed are poor and generally ethnic minorities. If you're rich, and not always, but sometimes white, you can afford a better lawyer. You can afford if you're rich, you can afford a very good lawyer to get you off. You know, justice is not blind, unless it's an extreme case. But generally, if you're poor, and we've seen cases in the United States where people go to prison who are innocent, but because they can't afford the bail, they stay in prison. They didn't actually commit a crime, but in order to fight the case, they actually, no, it wasn't a bail. They couldn't, contest the case. It would be too expensive, so they just order as they get they get involved in they issue a plea bargain. So you say, yeah, okay, I did it and I stay in prison for a few weeks because if I fight it, I could be free, but it's extremely expensive. So I can't do that. A really messed up, fucked up system. Like OJ. No, there are exceptions, okay? But generally, if you're poor, you're going to jail. I think they also want to bring back debtors' prisons in the United States. It's called cash bail, I think. Yeah, if you can't afford the cash bail, you're out. You're going down. Okay, let's say I wanted to respond to this as well. Matt Hancock refuses to say when social care injustices will be fixed. Health Secretary will not reveal whether long-term promised reforms will be in Queen's speech. More resources are needed to address the significant injustices in the social care system, the Health Secretary has said, but he refused to say when the government would outline reforms, so they're not going to reform. If they don't say when, they're not going to do it. If they were truly going to do it, they would say yes within this Parliament. But he mounting criticism of the Conservatives' failure to properly address the issue in more than a decade in office. This is not an issue they care about. The government's legislative priorities will be set out on Tuesday, which we heard, while the Tories have repeatedly insisted that care reforms are high on their agenda. Matt Hancock refused to say whether or not they would be included, and they were not. Another waste of time. No, sorry, I already shared that. One moment. There was another. And then I will move on because there are some other issues I want to talk about this evening. So what was left? What made it into the Queen's speech? What was left out? So levelling up. Once again, this levelling up. Storm Buckingham Palace. There is no levelling up is a slogan. Levelling up is about pumping money into Tory seats in order to prop them up at the expense of other areas of the country. And you can do that for a certain amount of time, but it will eventually run out. You can't continue to do that. Setting up free ports, for example, which are not going to create jobs or real investment. They're just places to launder money, basically. Post-Brexit changes, a series of measures including the Subsidy Control Bill, which allows domestic regime of state aid. I don't know if that's in conflict with the Boris Johnson's trade deal with the EU, and a bill put on post-EU public procurement. So you know what type of public procurement this is going to be. You know how this is going to be. Other plans include moves to allow the UK to recognise professional qualifications from other countries. This is something that has been, I think this is where there's conflict perhaps within the government itself, where certain departments say, look, we need to be able to hire more people. Our businesses that operate within our sector need to be able to hire more people. For example, the NHS, they say we need to hire more doctors. The system is collapsing. We're losing people. We're losing staff. We need to make it easier to hire people from abroad. But then they're coming into conflict with the Home Office, where Priti Patel is like, no, because we need to keep the racists happy. We need to keep the racists on side. If I appear weak, I'm going to scuttle my chances of becoming Prime Minister someday. So I have to appear tough. I want to be like 21st century Margaret Thatcher. She has ambitions to become Prime Minister. I'm certain. New animal welfare laws. I'm not sure what that's about. The Turing scheme. Yes, the Turing scheme, which is an international student exchange program to replace Erasmus, which is it's just for rich kids, basically. It's not actually for, it's nothing near as good as Erasmus. Planning, so new build properties to multiply over time, new rights for renters. We'll have to see how this comes out. The Tories are not the party to look after renters, or they're more for allowing more and more people to buy to rent, or landlords in general. Have you seen the new tank the British Army are getting? Yes, it was designed and put up as an export tank by British Aerospace 20 or so years ago. Wasn't this tank being built in Germany? I thought that was the case. The contract went to a German company. I'd like to see the Brexiteers respond to that. Our tanks are made in Germany. Didn't we win 2 world wars and one World Cup? Health, of course, the health and care bill we put into legislation legislation form plans already outlined to shake up the structure of the NHS, giving ministers more direct control. As I've said before, the Conservatives are about concentrating power in Westminster. It's not about divvying out power to local administrations or devolved administrations, local councils or devolved administrations. Challenger 3 is designed by Ryan Metal Max. There we go. And then we have the ID cars, Asylum, already outlined by Priti Patel, the Home Secretary. This would make it significantly harder for people to claim asylum in the UK. This idea, what is wrong with people claiming asylum in the UK? The numbers are extremely small, and these are people who want to better their lives. These are people who are generally highly trained. They're coming to the country. They want to work. They want to better their lives. Yes, they're claiming asylum, but if you look at the vast majority of people who have claimed asylum, they want to work. They don't want to sit on the dole. They want to use the experiences that they have. They want to give something back to the country that has hosted them. Are there some bad apples? Yes, there are. But there are bad apples in all aspects of society. But we don't, punish everyone for the one individual. I generally punish all the Tories for Boris Johnson, but that's an exception. But generally, I don't say all politicians are bad because of Boris Johnson. Boris has to be doing some money laundering, James. Yes, Boris is definitely... I don't know Boris, but the Conservatives definitely are involved in some... This is the whole reason for the Freeports to do money laundering, to allow their friends to relocate into these low-tax areas, to benefit from that. And somehow, later on, the Tory minister who facilitated this will get their back scratched. To make it more difficult, to make it significantly harder for people to claim asylum in the UK, particularly if they have travelled through a designated safe country first. This is populist in aim, directed at voters who are worried by TV footage of refugees arriving in the UK unofficially in small boats from France. Nigel Farage once again. If, as expected, the plan is challenged by the UN Refugee Agency and charities, this could help ministers by appearing to stand up to liberal do-gooders. This is appear tough, appear like a real fascist, and the fascists will be happy. The racists will be happy. The racists don't like the United Nations. The racists definitely don't like charities trying to stand up for human rights. So if you appear to be on the side of the racists will be happy, and the racists will continue to vote for you. I truly believe that Priti Patel's objectives are to become Prime Minister someday. Most politicians want to become prime minister, but I truly believe she wants to emulate maybe someone like Margaret Thatcher, but even worse. Anyway, guys, I want to move on to some other stories. So there was, before we go to that, I just want to read some of your chats on the stream, because you guys make the stream. Agree regarding PP. Only Nazis build walls to corral their enemies. Let's not do that, yes. We have people coming to Derry to sit an exam to prove knowledge of nursing every week. This week they were from Zimbabwe. Last year they were from Asia. Now it's Africa. Yeah, I mean, what's the point in winning an election if you don't want to get the laundered money? Laundered money, yes. 18% of politicians are landlords. It's a huge problem also in Ireland, where I'm pretty sure there's a significant portion of politicians in Ireland are landlords. UK will become the China of the West if it keeps going like this. Or the North Korea of the West, even worse. I was wrong about the tank. It was designed and put up for sale in late 1998. They have access to zero inflation money, nearly create, and then print more, creating inflation. People in the pyramid pay for it. Inflation is some kind of hidden tax. Yeah, inflation is a type of hidden tax, because the people at the bottom pay the cost, while the people at the top are able to absorb it without any loss of status. So I want to read this report. This is from Northern Ireland. 10 people shot dead in Ballymurphy were innocent inquest finds. So this is an inquest that released its report today, where a Bloody Sunday style killing took place a few months before Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday took place in Derry in 1972. In 1971, near Belfast, there was another similar type of attack where members of the British parachute regiment murdered 10 people. 9 of them were killed outright, and 1 of them died, I think, later on. So I just want to read part of this report. This has been justice being done, or at least the first step of justice being done. It says here, 10 people killed in Belfast during a British Army operation in 1971 were unarmed, innocent civilians and posed no threat to soldiers, an inquest in Northern Ireland has found. The damning findings of a long-awaited coroner's report, like 1971, 50 years ago. You know, these people have been waiting 50 years for this report. How is that acceptable? Yes, it's a great day for these people. They finally had the names of their family members cleared, because they were the British Army had believed that they were IRA terrorists or in some way linked to the IRA. These people were innocent, but it took 50 years. 50 friggin' years for this to happen. 9 of the dead were killed by soldiers using unjustified force, but the inquest could only establish who killed the 10th victim, John McCarr, during a blood-soaked incursion in Ballymurphy, a West Belfast Catholic neighbourhood, in August 1971. What was happening, and I'm not an expert on this by any stretch of the imagination, but what was happening in the early 70s was that the British Army were basically going into communities, and they would from hear information from, for example, an informant or whatever, that there was probably an IRA man on this street. And instead of actually investigating that, they would go in and they would basically arrest every man, generally, or young woman on the street as well, and imprison them. And in some cases they didn't even bother to imprison people, like arrest them. The military were arresting people. It's not people being arrested and taken to a police cell and then having a judge. people were interned. This actually boosted the IRA in the 1970s. So it had the opposite effect of dealing with what they were sent there to do in the first place. Anyway, that's a separate issue. During 1971, all of the deceased in the series of inquests were entirely innocent of wrongdoing on the day in question, said the coroner, Mrs. Justice Keegan, dismissing claims by soldiers that some of the victims had been armed and shooting. Families of the dead wept and applauded after the findings were read out in court, saying that the truth had come out after half a century. We have corrected history today. The inquest confirmed that the soldiers who came to the area supposedly to protect us turned their guns on us, said John Taggart, whose father Daniel was among the dead. It hasn't actually sank in. It's like a dream, said Joan Conley, holding a framed portrait of her mother, Joan Conley, a mother of 8 whom soldiers had branded an IRA gunwoman. The joy and the peace of the mixed emotions that my mummy had been declared an innocent woman. Her father had not been able to identify. I read this from a different report earlier on. Her father was not able to identify his wife in the morgue. So this is the mother of Joan Conley, because her face was mangled. I think she had been shot in the hand and then in the head, in the face. Her name had been cleared. We've got justice after 50 years. My daddy died a broken man. It's heartbreaking, all of this, because none of this was necessary. Northern Ireland was set up in order to create an artificial majority, to maintain a situation that was unacceptable to half the population. When Northern Ireland was set up in 1921, they didn't say, okay, let's create a stable environment where all people are respected. No, it was not. And it festered for years and years, and then it exploded in 1969. And then we've had the 30 years of 25 years of troubles since then, from that period until 1994, when the IRA had their ceasefire, and then we had the peace process culminating in the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. And now we're back to seeing the same types of troubles once again, because of Brexit. I just want to show you part of a report on this as well from Channel 4, where we're just going to see some of what the people, the families of the victims have said.
Marathon march for the truth is over. The families of those killed arriving at the coroner's court in another twist in the saga which parallels Bloody Sunday. The deaths, then the long, long campaign to have the reputations restored of their loved ones. The coroner, Siobhan Keegan, needed about 2.5 hours to deliver the truth. The families of those killed and injured needed half a century. The key finding: all the deceased were entirely innocent of any wrongdoing on the day in question. And repeatedly, the shooting of the deceased has not been justified by the state. Time and again, disproportionate force used to describe the army's conduct. The lack of investigation in one case was an abject failure of the state. August the 9th, 1971, 600 paratroopers stormed into the Ballymurphy estate, seizing alleged IRA members to be imprisoned without trial.
The army rolled into all the Catholic areas.
600 paratroopers came in.
The people who were to protect us were in fact taking sides against us.
Over 3 days, the soldiers would shoot up to 40 people. The Ballymurphy massacre. 10 were shot dead. The 11th died of a heart attack. The army claimed to have shot IRA gunmen. That falsehood fed to the media by a young captain, one Mike Jackson. he'd go on to become head of the British Army. Ballymurphy today at peace. British soldiers long gone from these streets. The wasteland where innocent civilians were gunned down, largely built over today.
This one here, it's about the 4 that were killed here, for Mr Taggart, Mr Murphy and Noel Phillips and Mummy.
Briege Voyle left motherless at 14, along with 7 brothers and sisters.
And she just loved her children. Life was what it was. She loved the wee game of bingo, she liked the smoke. But that was it, she didn't drink.
But truth and justice are very different.
Why? Why was our loved one shot? If they, after all these evidence, why were they shot? Is somebody going to tell us this? Is the British government going to tell us this?
Look, I don't want to stoke things, but the reason these people were shot was because the British state at the time considered them lesser of people. I know this is controversial. I know people don't like to hear it, but I see this happening again. And I wouldn't put it beyond the realm of possibility. And I hope I'm wrong here. I truly hope I'm wrong here. That the way the British government are acting at the moment, the way Boris Johnson and the Tories are acting at the moment, they want to return to this sort of mentality. And I am truly afraid for what's happening in Northern Ireland at the moment, that there is a risk of a return to this type of situation, where the Tories are feeding or allowing to fester the resentment towards the European Union, towards the border in the Irish Sea, in the loyalist communities, allowing that to fester and not stepping in and trying to correct and trying to reduce the tensions there. You're starting to see a split in unionism. And I also fear what could happen if Scotland pushes ahead with independence. Is there a risk? I hope I'm being hyperbolic here, I truly do. But is there a risk that the British government could try to stop Scottish independence using the military? They've used the military before in Northern Ireland. They considered the people of Northern Ireland lesser. Their lives were worth less than maybe people from other parts of the UK. And I'm afraid that they could consider it the same in Scotland. And I hope I'm truly wrong when I say that.
Is the soldiers who actually shot our loved ones, are they going to be told they have to tell the truth?
Her mother, Joan Connolly, was shot several times through the hand, thigh and face, trying to help another victim. Today, for us all, the truth of Joan Connolly's innocence is finally recognised.
Yeah, we've done it. We've done it. The families cleared our loved ones' name. We got their names cleared. The history books aren't being rewrote. They're being ratified.
Portaferry, a long way from Ballymurphy in many ways, though just 35 miles distant. Father Hugh Mullen would escape the pressures of Ballymurphy's frontline ministry to sail these waters. He saved his cousin from drowning in them.
Well, would you want your brother to be called a murderer or a gunman, which was said that he was? And that is completely untrue.
So at least these people are getting the names of their relatives cleared. And then I think the next step for these should be to take the British government to court, or at least take the military involved to court. Let me see. We have James. Thank you so much for that super chat, James. Will USA trade with the UK now? With the Northern Ireland mess. Look, I don't see it being a situation where the peace process in regards to the Good Friday Agreement is undermined. But I see that there's a risk of just letting things go, just ignoring the problem. I don't think there's an active... I don't think it's... How can I put it? The UK government has been active in its attempts to facilitate the loyalist parliamentaries today. That happened in the past. But I do think there's a sort of a sense just to ignore the problem, it will sort itself out, and there is a real risk that it could get out of control. And then if it does get out of control, then you would have Republican paramilitaries responding to the loyalist paramilitaries because they would be, quote unquote, defending their communities. And then it could get really out of control. And then what would happen then is you'd have to bring in the British Army once again. And you don't want to bring that in because you create a situation that can quickly spiral out of control, as we've seen back in the 1970s. Kenneth, thank you so much for that super chat. 2 of them were British Army veterans as well. Veterans were shot and abandoned by the people they fought for. This is and this is something that's very important to remember, that the veterans, many veterans around the country, and this is where, where people criticize me for being anti-British. I care about the people on both sides of this. There are soldiers who were told, go and do this, go and do that. These people need to be fired at. These people need to be shot. And in many cases, these soldiers were acting under the orders of their superiors, and they didn't know what they were doing. The superiors have to be held accountable. The government of the time need to be, in some way, the minister or the civil servants responsible for all of this need to be held accountable. Individual soldiers, in some cases yes, in some cases no. Thanks for that, Kenneth. But yes, if you look at what's happened to many veterans, they have been thrown on the trash heap. But that's part of the Tory policy. It's similar to what the Republicans do in the United States. We worship the military when it's fighting, but as soon as the soldiers come back home, we wash our hands of the situation. Johan, thank you so much for that super chat. Do you think Republic of Ireland has the money and will it take in Northern Ireland? So what you're talking about, of course, is a United Ireland. United Ireland would be extremely expensive for the Republic of Ireland. It would damage it economically. But I do see at the same time a huge amount of support financially and politically, I think, from both the European Union and from the United States. If there was a United Ireland, the support it would receive from the United States would be massive, would be enormous, and from the European Union. The European Union would be willing to pump billions of euros into a United Ireland in order to facilitate. But they have already done that. That's the thing. Since the Good Friday Agreement, there has been numerous initiatives from the European Union in order to facilitate peace, to help both sides of both communities. For example, just a very mundane, simple example. If any of you go and visit the Titanic Museum in Belfast, you'll see, and I should have taken a photo at the time I was there, you'll see part of it is co-funded by the European Union. The European Union paid for some of the investment, some of the reconstruction and the building of the massive museum there. Is a wonderful monument and attraction to visit in Belfast if you're ever there. And it's been co-funded by the European Union. Dr. Johan, thank you so much for that super chat. Hey guys, all the best from COVID land. I want off this trip. COVID land, I paid my ticket to enter COVID land. Now I want to leave. Or is it like the Hotel California? You can check out, but you can never leave. Okay. So that's a serious issue, but I just wanted to highlight that for tonight, and there was a positive there finally. In some other good news, we're getting close to the end of the stream, so I want to keep an eye on that. I want to jump to a completely different topic. James says, thank you so much for that super chat. I don't see Biden not helping Ireland in war. The Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland would be greatly supported by someone like Joe Biden. But I don't think Joe Biden will still be president when a United Ireland eventually comes about. I'm not predicting anything about Joe Biden. It's just I think it's going to take a significant amount of time. So, UBI, election success for UK politicians backing universal basic income. Yay! So, scores of politicians, including almost half of the Welsh Parliament, have signed a UBI trial pledge. So, scores of politicians who won seats in last week's elections, including almost half of the Welsh Parliament, have signed a pledge calling for a universal basic income system to be trialled. Members of the Senate, and the Scottish Parliament and councillors across England have promised to lobby for the creation of a pilot UBI schemes in their countries and areas. The system proposes that every citizen, regardless of their means, receives a sum of money regularly for life to cover basic costs of living. Its proponents argue that it will alleviate poverty, yes, 100%, and give people time to refrain and adapt to changing workplaces, 100% agreed there, to be more creative and become more active and engaged. In the run-up to the elections in England, Scotland and Wales and Scotland, the UBI Lab Network, a worldwide group of activists, researchers and citizens, asked candidates to sign a pledge promising to put pressure on governments and councils to launch trials. 25 candidates who won seats in 60-strong Senate signed up, as did 29 in Scotland. Andy Burnham, yay! He's a hero of mine, who was re-elected as Mayor of Greater Manchester, is also on board. UBI Lab Network is still calculating how many of the council hopefuls in England were elected, but the Green Party surge will help with almost 300 of its candidates signed the pledge. So this would be great if it's going to be. So of course there's a lot of work to be done before we start to see this take place. They'll have to decide, how much money to put into this kitty in order to find out, and then we're going to have to see how many people are going to be covered in this. I think if it's done right, as always, if something is done right, it will be a success. A problem with the UBI in the past is that the trials were very limited. There were there wasn't sufficient funds being invested into them, and they were overly means tested. So they weren't truly universal. Some of them were not basic. They were too little. So it needs to be something universal and basic, and it needs to be for at least a significant amount of time, at least 2 years, not something like 6 months or 2 months, or even a year. It has to be much longer, because then you can see the results of that. And it's difficult to get parties or administrations on board if it's something for life. Tory UBI to pay for wallpaper for life. Unbelievable British ignorance. I trust our finance minister to do things right on this, Max. Why not universal credit to start a start project for UBI? I hope you're joking there. The U is kind of important, yes. If you don't have the universal part, it's not really. See, this is a problem. Many people think, well, it should be means tested. But if it's means tested, it's no longer universal. You defeat a huge benefit of universal basic income by having it means tested. Good night, Davey. I didn't see if Davey was on the chat tonight. And Yoni K, great to see you once again. I hope you're well. Haven't seen you for a while. Okay, let's move on. So there's some good news about UBI. Now let's get back to, of course, Brexit. There's always Brexit. So Britain warns EU that Northern Ireland protocol unsustainable. Brexit minister says UK would consider all of our options after meeting with business agents. So as soon as I say, well, I don't think Boris Johnson is going to destroy the protocol, well, then we have this news. The UK government has warned that the special Brexit arrangements for Northern Ireland as they stand are unworkable. in an intervention made at the sensitive phase in talks with the EU on the controversial border checks. I think this is another attempt by Boris Johnson's government to extract concessions, which will not work. After a visit to meet business leaders in Belfast on Tuesday, the Brexit Minister, Lord Frost, the unelected bureaucrat, urged the EU to take a pragmatic approach in talks. Once again, it's always the same sort of language. Yes, you need to be pragmatic. Yes, we're making progress. The protocol is unworkable unless there's changes. Once again, why did you sign up to it if you didn't think it was workable? Maybe you should have read it first. And he warned that the UK would continue to consider all our options in relation to the protocol, which in the past has included unilateral action to suspend it in part. It's clear from my visit that the protocol is presenting significant challenges, not the protocol, Brexit. For many in Northern Ireland, businesses have gone to extraordinary efforts to make the current requirements work, but it is hard to see the way the protocol is currently operating can be sustainable for long. This is just once again blaming the protocol, not blaming Brexit, deflecting problems, away. So some of the issues are, of course, goods coming across, and I think this is an attempt by the Tories, who know that Brexit is going to get worse. They're already preparing the ground to blame something else, and of course they're blaming the protocol here. They know that as the grace periods are getting closer to the end, and some have already passed, they need to blame someone. Blame the EU, blame the protocol. That's their way out of this. Let me read some of your comments. Well, I think I missed a super chat. Let me go back up. Oh no. James, thank you so much for that super chat. Don't the public need over 100,000 like Boris? 150,000, James. That's what Boris said. He called it chicken feed. 100. He actually called it, I think, 300,000. He said a minimum for Boris Johnson to live is 350,000. Oh my God. Did the man from Del Monte say yes? What's that about? The man from the EU said no. You might want to translate that, killer. How dare you? NIP is Bozo's crowning achievement. The Northern Ireland Protocol. If you diss the Northern Ireland Protocol, you must prepare for the unacceptable fury. Universal nanny income. But yeah, I find it always funny how Boris Johnson complains about, how much money he's not earning. I'm not earning, 400,000, 500,000 pounds a year. That's what I should be on. I'd love to put Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, any of these people on universal credit for 6 months. Can you imagine? Well, it wouldn't actually last 6 months, because after the first day they'd be on the phone, getting it sorted, getting the money. They wouldn't have to wait 5 weeks to have the money arrive. Isn't that what it's something like up to 5 weeks in some cases. For some reason, the EU is taking risks for UK food exports. Isn't something the EU thinks is a good idea. I think this is just another attempt to blame, once again, the problems of Brexit on the protocol. The unionist parties in Northern Ireland are doing exactly the same thing. The ones who voted for Brexit are saying, the problem is not Brexit, the problem is the protocol. Yeah, but the protocol is not the problem. It's Brexit. As I said before, it's like blaming the fire extinguisher and not the fire. So we're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to show you a quick video of what's happening in Scotland. Some good news in Scotland.
However, the situation overall is now a very positive one, and so that means we are in a position to relax more restrictions and to restore much more normality to our everyday lives, which I know is something that everybody is desperate to see. So that improved position overall is why I am able to confirm today that from Next Monday, at the 17th of May, all parts of mainland Scotland, with, as I said, the highly probable exception of Moray, will move from the current level 3 down to level 2. But before I set out what that means, let me address the exceptions to that. Firstly, some further detail and context on that situation in Moray. At the moment, across Scotland as a whole, we're seeing 23 new cases.
Is Moray where Douglas Ross is from? Is this to punish Douglas Ross?
A week for every 100,000 people in the population. So levels are relatively low and much lower than they've been for a long time in Scotland as a whole. But in Moray, rates are more than 4 times higher than that just now and stand at around 94 new cases per 100,000 people. As I said earlier, there is, in the opinion of public health experts, widespread community transmission happening in Moray just now. And so it's against that backdrop that, unless the situation was to materially improve over the next few days, it would simply not be safe or sensible to ease restrictions there from Monday. And that's why I have to flag up today that it is highly probable that Moray will stay at level 3 for a further period. It's also important that we take precautions to reduce the risk of the transmission of COVID that is happening within Moray spreading from there to other parts of Scotland as...
Sorry, I know that Douglas Ross is from Moray, but it seems like, we need to punish Moray because, well, Douglas Ross is there, so we need to punish. Okay.
As restrictions start to ease more significantly elsewhere. So if Moray does stay in level 3, which, as I said earlier, will be finally decided at the end of the week, we will also reimpose travel restrictions, again for a hopefully short period. And this will mean that travel in and out of Moray will be limited to permitted purposes only. If the decision is to keep Moray at level 3, and right now I do consider that to be very likely, I can confirm that we will provide additional financial assistance to businesses that will be affected by that. And also, given how deeply unwelcome I know this will be for people living in the Moray area, I can also confirm that we will be doing everything possible to ensure that any extension of level 3 is for as short a period as possible.
So, good news, unless you live in Moray, then I'm sorry, some more bad news. So it's hopefully, especially in the UK, we're seeing that the corner is being turned. Things are getting better. Remember I mentioned the wee Didi Ross didn't have the bottle to stand as a candidate, only on the list. Has 4 jobs now. He's like, what is it? He's a linesman. No, he's a referee or a linesman. He's also a Tory MP. He's an MSP. Does he collect bins as well? I'm not sure. How is it possible for a politician to have so many jobs? So, guys, I want to, just before we're going to end the stream here, almost just over the time. So I want to say a huge thank you to, don't go yet, but we have our one for the road. So a huge thank you for everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for all of your comments. Thanks so much to everyone who sent their super chat. They're greatly appreciated. Thanks to all the moderators for keeping the stream on the straight and narrow. So let's enjoy our one for the road, and then we'll I'll see everyone who's on Patreon. If you want to join and jump on the Discord after the stream, we can have a chat about what happened tonight and about Boris Johnson and his dictatorship. But let's see the one for the road.
Well, that was some election, and we got 64. Here, did you see Michael Gove says he was walking about Glasgow and people were shaking his hand, congratulating him? Aye, sure. And I'm in the next Madonna video, Nicola. Whatever. I've seen you, Vogal, and you're brilliant at it. Right, here's the news. As of Monday, we're going to allow 8 people for 8 families to start mixing. Now, what we're saying is you can now go into the house and you can have physical contact, but that doesn't mean to say you can start winching everybody, licking each other on the face, obviously, and shaggers. That isn't the go-ahead for a big let's all meet in Strathclyde Park and go a-pumping. We're asking everybody still to use caution as we ease out. You've seen what's happened in Moray. People are fucking sneaked in up there because of it. Oh, so I can now announce that, oh my God, the bingo's open. Me, Big Philomena, Isa, Bridie McBride, we all can head to the bingo, but obviously in restricted numbers. We don't want to fucking ram this or we'll end up with that virus again. So we're trying to just apply a wee bit of caution and mindfulness. Right, we're going to go to the press to see if we get as many repetitive questions today. Before that, I'm going to have a wee glass of Prosecco. Oh, yum, yum.
By many people, there will be those, of course, without gardens who wonder what's the difference between hugging a friend in your garden and doing it in a park.
Oh, my fucking heart's roasted. Look, you've seen what's happened in Murray. Folk can't even go about their business because of what's happened there. We're saying to people, use caution. Stuff is going to open up. There's going to be 8 people, 8 families. We're saying don't go fucking mad. Don't go tonto. Just look after each other, 2 Alsatians apart, and still keep your eye on everything. I mean, do we want to fuck this up with the madness? I'm sorry, I've done nothing but swear the day. It's just how I'm feeling. Right, mask on. Right, come on, you two. Head out. Frank, get the door. I want a pie supper the day with a wee pickled onion.
Fantastic, as always. So remember, guys, no pumping, okay? I'll see you all next Friday for the Friday night stream. So at the same bat time, same bat channel, 9:30 British Summer Time. So have a great weekend. Great week, sorry, not weekend. Great week. Once again, thanks to everyone who came on the stream tonight. Thanks for smashing the like button. Thanks for all of your comments. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat, and a big thank you once again to the moderators for doing a great job. So I see you all on Friday. Maybe I need some Prosecco myself. So I'll see you all on Friday. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Take care. And as Boris Johnson always says, stay alert. Good night, guys.